Haven, and welcome back to Arts Respond on WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven. I'm your host, Lucy Gelman, and today I am so excited to be here with Dr. Melissa Sujan and Olivia John talking about Olivia Dives In. It is the newest edition, right?
Yes, it
From
is.
Yes, from Lauren Simone Publishing or Lauren Simone Pubs. Um, I will read a synopsis just to give folks an idea, but then I want to literally dive into this book and really talk about all of it. I should say that we met a number of years ago, sort of right before the COVID-19 pandemic shut the world down in certain ways. So it's exciting to see you growing your footprint as an author. I almost said 5 years later, but it is 2026, so 6 years later. Um, so I will say the book, Meet Olivia Lauren, a girl who never thought sports were her thing until she decided to give swimming a try. At first, she was nervous, but something wonderful happened. Olivia discovered a brand new passion. Dive into this inspiring story about trying new things, building confidence, and finding joy in unexpected places. So I want to talk to both of you about this, but I am going to toss it first to Olivia. I would love to talk, about what inspired this book. Um, and then also your growth as a young author, but let's start there. Like, tell me about what inspired this book, um, for you as someone who has been writing and thinking about storytelling.
I think, okay, that's a good question. What inspired this book mostly is kind of my journey with finding an extracurricular slash a sport that was for me. And I think a lot of people can struggle with that, and that struggle can feel very internal and isolating. So I think being able to tell my story and like inspire other people, like it's okay, it doesn't matter what year you start, like as long as you're willing to try and willing to have that new beginning. So that's what inspired.
And I asked you this before we were on mic. I said, are you a swimmer? And you said, well, I enjoy it, but I don't really consider myself a swimmer. So tell me, like in my mind, it doesn't matter what you like if you have a recreational passion, you don't have to go to the Olympics. And so tell me about, what you also get from sports, because for so many people, it's a really important way to clear their mind.
Yeah, for sure. I think swimming is special in the sense that like it's a life skill and everyone should learn it. But once you get good at it, it just becomes so fun and being able to do it with other people is great. Especially when I was doing competitive swimming back in high school, having those relays, having that team that you could depend on. That was really fun.
Ooh, I want to talk more about that, and sort of the idea of like teamwork and belonging. But Dr. Melissa Sujan, I also want to bring you into this because, like all of these books, this is a joint venture. And so talk to me about, like the process that both of you go through when you have this idea and the idea turns into a storyboard and the storyboard turns into a story. It I feel like children's literature is pretty underestimated, and probably the most difficult form of literature actually to write. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that. So talk me through the process and the collaboration.
So I have very little background in sports, any sports. Like even when I try to give examples in class about sports, I'm like, is that a football team? Is that a basketball team? Like, so I was socialized where girls kind of did their own thing and men watched sports. So literally, my father would have a big screen TV, he had a recliner, and his male friends came over, they had alcohol and they watched sports. But in our family, it was integrative. So Olivia watched soccer with her dad. So I didn't grow up with that. So I'm watching them and I'm like, I don't even know, is that a goal or is that what is that called? So we write from our experiences. And because I think that when you share your story, you realize that other people can relate to your story. So here I am, a mother trying to expose my children to sports. The older daughter, Alyssa Simone, she played softball She played basketball, she ran track, she liked to sweat. Then here comes Miss Prissy Olivia, who's just like into ballerina, into her dolls, into modeling and acting. She wanted nothing to do with sports. But I'm a college professor and I wanted my kids to get to be well-rounded and have a nice portfolio to submit to college. So Olivia's dad and I were like, Olivia, are you gonna try out? Are you gonna try out? She tried out for basketball. She didn't get in. She was so disappointed. And then she went for swimming and she got in and she was so surprised. And we were so proud. And we just wanted to tell that story. So most of our stories are not fiction. They're actually quite, you know, part of our stories.
Yeah, I think, one thing that stood out to me the very first time we met, which was at the Stetson Branch Library before it had like moved into its new home, was that both of you didn't see. So, Olivia, when you were growing up, you didn't always see yourself reflected in books. And so it's this idea of like if there's not a seat for you at the table, you bring a folding chair and then you also like you build a chair and you stay, right? And so talk to me about um making sure 6 years later, as you're no longer like this, you're still a young author, but you're no longer like an adult, well, no, I think still an adolescent, but not like a teenager, right? So talk to me about that journey and also making sure that more women of color and specifically more Black women and girls are reflected in books because I think especially in the climate that we're living in, this is really, really important.
I think a big part of it when it comes to, diversity, having women of color and, Black little girls who can have this story to look to is a lot of times when we tell Black stories, we want to advocate and we want to talk about the past and like how things have changed. But I think an important part of seeing yourself in literature and seeing yourself in movies and media is just seeing yourself doing all of these different kind of things. And I think that can be really inspiring. Like it doesn't always have to be like a tragic tale, even if it's fiction or nonfiction, just being able to look and be like, oh, like I could do that. It's possible for me to do this. So kind of just being uplifting in that sense, I think is really important when it comes to diversity.
And tell me also about your own personal experience doing swim team. Like some people realize that maybe they're not the team player that they thought they were when they do team sports, and I get the feeling that that is not what Olivia Dives In is about.
Yeah, my journey was certainly interesting because I had never been like in a team sports setting. It was definitely a big change, but being able to, go over to their houses like the night before a meet and kind of having that bond, that was really special to me. And you kind of just know that other people are relying on you, your coach is relying on you. And it does come with this pressure, but once you get it done, there is a sense of fulfillment. So I think being part of a team is a special feeling.
Dr. Melissa Sujan, I want to bring you in as well and ask, did you also think about the psychology of being on a team, right? Whether or not, so I know that you have two daughters, and so they're already learning things like you have to share, you have to know when to step back and when to pick your battles and all the good things you learn from having a sibling. If my little brother is out there listening to this, but also I feel like when you're on a team, that's like supersized or on steroids because you have to learn communication skills in a completely new and sometimes very difficult ways. So yeah, so were you thinking about that as well?
I wasn't focused so much on the team sport aspect of it, like the team or group identity. I think I just focused mostly on being present and being represented. For example, in the story, we mention the first female Black swimmer who got an Olympic gold medal. So it was really more about just being aware that you can do it. And my area of expertise in research is all about like racism and stereotyping and discrimination. So every story that I write is about breaking myths and breaking stereotypes and caricatures. So that's kind of because there's a big stereotype. Black girls don't swim. Black girls don't get their hair wet. right? So just showcasing girls of all colors in the book is highlighting that no, we're all swimmer, we can all swim. It's a life skill that we should all get.
I think it's also really important that it's about like a young female athlete. Because even as we see these incredible women, right? Like the number of women role models that we have is growing and growing, and it's so exciting. And even so, all the time I hear from people that sports are like a male thing, and not just watching, not like just watching and consuming sports, like doing sports. Like, oh,
Mhm.
that's a guy thing. Um, and so I think it is really important to have this woman or young woman, and then also to look to other women who have blazed that trail.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, and Olivia, I'm wondering if, if you can talk about, or really both of you, the process of like bringing, birthing this story and taking it from this is a story I want to tell to like now it's out in the world.
I don't know if you want to go first, Mom.
So we wrote the story, and I have to tell you that the story changed 6 different times because we started it when she was on the swim team, and we finished it when she graduated and was no longer on the swim team. So thinking about what is the ending of this story? What is the story arc? What is this thing that she has to overcome? So the story actually kept changing. Right? We had people read it and tell us what they thought. Then you have to think about the audience. What grade am I writing for? Because you don't want to use language that's too complicated. You want to make sure it's the right reading age. So it's very iterative design. It's very much like science, just doing it over and over and over till it feels good enough to get it out there. And I want to tell anyone who is an aspiring author that it's never going to be perfect. Even when it's printed, you're going to be like, oh, I should have fixed this. I should have asked the illustrator to do this. I should have asked the editor to do this. But you're never going to have your bestseller if you never continue, put it out there, right? Every author regrets probably their first book, like, oh my God, I can't believe I published that, right? But you have to get it out there. And I want to just give a shout out to my illustrator, Olu, because I was like, no, I don't look, because our characters are in there. And I was like, I don't look like that. My husband, he looks like that, but I don't look like that. So I just want to shout out all the artists that have to work with authors to get the story the way it's in their
Well,
head.
I wanted to ask about that because I think that I mean picture books are not just for kids, right? We know that. But in children's books, so much of it is the illustration and the way that the story carries the illustration and the way that the story carries vice versa, the illustration carries the story. And so I would actually love to hear more about your relationship of in the process of finding Olu, um, working on the book and like your wild hopes and dreams when you think about like it's almost like this matchmaking process of finding an illustrator, right?
Absolutely. So I believe in the law of attraction. Honestly, like every time I've ever said, I once like I put it out there, whether it's on a vision board or in my head or just speaking it on my tongue, a door opens. Olu probably emails me. He found me. He's like, I saw your publishing house. I'm an illustrator. I live in Nigeria. I'd love to work with you. Probably 2 years before I gave him the book. Yeah. So finally, I said, after finishing a couple projects, I was like, this book needs to come out. And I sent him a cover design that I had in mind. I said, can you make this happen? And then he started sending me some black and white drawings. And I was like, yeah, this is coming together. I tried to make it as easy for him as possible. I took tons of pictures. So we gave him actual pictures from Olivia's meets. So that helped. Gave him family pictures. There's one page that there's a room where Olivia is standing in our living room, our fictional living room, and there are photos on the wall of her cousins. So it's like a homage to our whole family, and he's trying to get everyone included. So it was a special process.
That's really beautiful. I love that. And I love that you're bringing in f like folks who are close to your heart. Um, Olivia, I want to ask you, I mean this story, yes, is about a swim team and about someone finding new skills and finding that she can in fact dive in multiple senses of the word, right? but it's also just about like learning to communicate with other people. And so I'm wondering for you as someone who now is also a college student and an author and like holding and juggling a lot of different things, what lessons from the book are you bringing into your own life?
It's a great question. I think a big one when it comes to communicating, I guess specifically within a team, is, being able to advocate for yourself and not being afraid to speak up. I think that's huge, and that applies in every aspect of your life. And then yeah, being able to ask for help, being able to trust other people and rely on other people. I mean, I am in college now, but those group projects do always come around. You have to be able to compromise. I think that's a big one too. So kind of just learning to work with people and, give some, take some. But yeah.
I also do wonder, is there something specific, I mean, like something specific to swimming and swim team that then carries over for you? Only because it's such a like in some ways you're so vulnerable in the water. Even if you've done something 100 times, like the 102nd time, it can be fluky or weird. Um, and so I feel like you really have to trust the people who are both in the water with you and who are pulling for you and who know if maybe something's up or something's wrong.
Yeah. So I think a big part of swimming specifically is trusting yourself. It's kind of on the nose, but diving in is this process of being able to just dive in head down. Like the reason you're going to mess up a dive is because you're not going to trust yourself. You're not going to trust that you'll have your formation right. So you're going to look up, and that's when you belly flop or whatever the case is. But yeah, trusting yourself and having that faith and really being able to dive in with no regrets, just going for it. I think that's a really big thing.
Also, like now that it's making its way out into the world, what are your just wild hopes and dreams for this book? Both of you.
So at the end of the book, there are six activities. So we hope that students, families don't just read it once and put it down, but engage with it. So there are different activities like there's a find a word, there's a journal, there's a memory challenge asking like reading comprehension questions. So our goal for books is literacy, right? Tablets are cool, cell phones are cool, video games are cool,
Are
but
they?
but there's nothing like just fingering through a book, just leafing through the pages and slowing down, right? Some of us are so anxious because we have alarms telling us time to get up, time to go here, time to go there. We're running around from work to extracurricular activity, team sports. We're just so busy. But to have a moment and just sit and take deep breaths and enjoy a story, that's our goal. Our goal is to help people slow down, but we really care about literacy and we want all children, no matter what their color or background is, to enjoy a good read every now and again.
Yeah, I think that's a really good reason. I think that's very important, like the literacy and learning. But I'm gonna be honest, like this doesn't apply for children's books, obviously, but sometimes you'll read a book, you're not gonna remember every word. So I think it's really like the message that you take from it and like how it helps you walk through life. That's the the biggest goal that I have personally when someone finishes a book of ours.
Do you ever envision or like see your younger self, with these, do you think about your younger self when you're working on these books? And also, if you have a table at like a library or a book fair or an event like, New Haven every year has Black Wall Street, where it's just like vendors, including artists and creatives. Um, you know, like part of this grew out of the fact that you didn't always have those books. And so do you think about like who is that little girl or those little girls or boys? We love boys, who are gonna pick up your books and say, I see myself reflected.
Yeah, I think it's hard to do this, but when writing and when editing, you kind of have to put yourself in like, oh, like, would I like this if I was a kid? And like, how would my past self feel about this? Like, it's kind of that childlike mindset and being like, oh, like, if I was reading this, like, would I get excited? Would I be nervous? Would I feel anticipation? So, yeah, kind of thinking back to my past self and then reading it through that lens and that perception makes it a lot easier to like see if the book is good or not.
Dr. Melissa Stujon, I also wonder for you, like your experience of this as some, I feel like you get to experience it as an educator, as a mother, and as someone who has gotten to be on this like extremely special journey with your kids, which is really beautiful. So are you also thinking about, who like what little girls and boys and humans are going to like see themselves in in these books?
I am totally, and I love going to those vendor events that you mentioned, like Black Wall Street, because I do get to spend time with young children. Fortunately for me, I have young nephews, so I can read the stories to them, and I have godchildren that I could read the story to them, and they can give me feedback because my kids are getting older now, and while they might help me in the college arena to be cool in the classroom, I'm losing that connection to the younger folks, right? So I do make time to go back to elementary schools and to preschools. That way I can stay and get to figure out what young people are feeling and desiring and anticipating. That's the only way to stay connected, to write stories that they'll relate to.
Did this also, resonate for you? Were you like at some point part of a team where you thought like, oh, this really resonates because of the skills that you're learning, like the interpersonal communication skills?
Oh yeah. Now I work in a lot of teams. So as a professor, usually I just, I do my own curriculum. I go to the classroom. I do my own grading. It's a very independent day. It's very hierarchical. I'm here, then my students are here. But I've started doing a lot of collaborative research and collaborative teaching. Just this week, Dr. Costa and I brought simulators in the classroom and we're teaching about childbirth, fetal development. So I do get to feel the joy of working with a team and seeing students benefit from that outcome.
Which we should have you on for a whole other episode on like how important that is because I mean all of this is important, but I also genuinely think like people don't understand science anymore,
No, it's so true.
including the science of like what people's bodies go through when they're pregnant and have children. So, but that is another episode or perhaps another book at some point. Um,
Good idea.
also like going forward, not just your sort of your hopes and dreamy dreams for this book, but do you have a sense of like, do you have a timeline that you think of like, okay, now that this is out in the world, I want to work on this next idea?
Oh yeah,
Or, oh
I
yeah,
have
okay, let's do
tons of
it.
folders with topics just sitting there, just waiting for me
I
to.
love this.
Yeah, so I'm very STEM focused. We're trying to push a lot of science, technology, engineering, and math books. So every once in a while, I'll say, Olivia, what do you think about this? Let's write a story. Or someone will come to me that fulfills that idea that I already had, and I can help them guide along their story.
I think it's also, I would love to hear this from two different perspectives. So maybe Olivia, I'll toss it to you. What are the conversations that you're having right now as you think about the importance of amplifying voices that are telling stories about women and girls in STEM, women and girls doing teamwork, women and girls just like genuinely being awesome, which we are, right? Um, and at the same time, I think we are living in this country and have been in this country that sometimes makes women or girls like feel small or embarrassed. And I think that's true, especially if you live at any intersection that has historically or is currently, being marginalized by people.
Yeah, I can start. I think it's so important to promote the media and the literature that is exemplifying women as just being women or doing something specific and having their achievements. Because a lot of times people like to say like, oh, like I'm not political or this isn't political, but I think literature is political because there was a time that women couldn't write and they had to go under pseudonyms just to get their words out, or if they were being written about, it was through a male lens, which can be so damaging sometimes when you kind of have this bias perception. So yeah, definitely just promoting the literature that talks about women, is written about women, and stands for, our rights and our freedom to express ourselves.
Oh, wow, that's so good. I don't think I have anything to add.
I would love to, I'm sure that you're having these conversations too, especially in the educational space. Like, yeah, the conversations we're having around gender, around sex, around education, I feel like are sometimes I'm like, wait, these feel like they're moving backwards.
Yes, it does
Um,
feel like we're being non-progressive in many elements related to gender and how we're
yeah,
tolerant about some things, but not willing to identify with others. So even the term, I teach psychology of women, and the term feminism, for some reason, it has stereotypes associated with it. But once people learn what it really is, that it's really just about rights and liberation and freedom for everyone, then people are like, oh, this is cool. But then when you ask them, so you'll say, what is I in my essays, I say, what is feminism? And then I say, do you identify as one? So they literally will say, yes, I think feminism is amazing. Women do deserve equal rights, equal pay, equal treatment, but I don't identify as a feminist. And it's wild to me. So I think people want to be allies, but don't always want to label themselves as an ally.
I think that's true. And I think that yeah, I hear people often treat the word feminist like it's a bad word. And it's so funny because it is just like, do you believe that people should have basic human rights? Oh, you do? Cool. Then you're a feminist. Like, congratulations, you've arrived. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. When you were speaking, it kind of just made me think that, some people may want to be an ally, but they might not necessarily want to be an activist. So they'll be
Exactly.
like, oh, yeah, I agree with that. But, they're not going to speak against things that go against it.
And then that's when I remind my students that when you do not speak up, you side with the oppressor.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah. I love that when I mean, she has said this over and over again, but when she spoke in New Haven several years ago, Bree Newsome used the term accomplice. And I feel like now people use it much more in like pretty commonplace speech. But at the time, I think for a lot of folks, it was an unfamiliar or not yet familiar term. Um, like, do you think of this work? It sounds like yes, as like this is justice work. I think literature is justice work,
Absolutely.
and like authors have always been truth tellers.
mm.
Yes. Yes, unlike journalists, which now have to be told you can't say this or can't say that on TV or your job will be, taken from you, authors get to say what they want, but then they might end up on a banned book list.
Yeah, which hopefully this never will. But yeah, I think every year when I see the ALA's lists of banned books, it's so upsetting because it's just like most of it is like lovely coming of age stories and really not, I think The Bluest Eye remains the most banned book in American history or like recent American history. So as long as the American Library Association has been making this list. Um, and it, yeah, the ability to speak truth to power and make very powerful and very true statements about white supremacy and racism is what makes that book so dangerous to people, right?
Mhm.
Um, so I'm also curious, like, how are you, and maybe this book is part of the way, how are you also filling your own cups in this time and making sure that you have some, balance? Or maybe you don't. I don't know.
That's a great question. You tell yourself, try to stay off social media, but then you get anxious because you want to know what's going on. You say things like, maybe I should protest, but then you're like, I'm an immigrant, don't want to be taken into custody. So you have to find that balance where you can be an educator or you can be an activist. And then I make space for myself. Like I read myself as an author. So I'm reading Mel Robbins' Let Them Theory. Everyone's talking about it. I'm like, I have to read this book. Yeah, so I find space by just finding quiet time to read, getting a massage, getting a pedicure, finding, times for self-care. But for me, my biggest thing is my faith. So I go to church on Sundays, I go to Bible studies on Wednesdays, and that's how I help to take care of myself and my community.
For me personally, I think right now it's just not losing hope. I think when people are on social media a lot, either doom scrolling or just, seeing what's going on, it can be like very disheartening, but kind of taking a moment, stepping back because at the end of the day, you can't solve everything at once, right? So kind of just encouraging the people around you and, obviously reposting and talking about it, but taking a moment to just enjoy life while you have it and like, while you're having all of these privileges. Because it does start with one person, kind of just being able to help your neighbor, and then your neighbor can help someone else, and then it goes from there. So I think having hope is just the most important, and that's the only way to have balance for sure.
And I think this book feels like a way to have hope. So before we wind down, one thing I want to ask is like also what's giving y'all hope, both of you?
Ah, what's giving me hope? I think a lot of times, like when you look up the news or you're on like TikTok or Instagram or whatever, you see a lot of like bad news, but I follow like certain pages that like have like these positive news, like, oh, the ozone layer is healing and like the stuff that you don't really hear as much. So I kind of try to look at that and then, just looking at the people around me because high schoolers and college students are protesting, like it makes you feel like more of a community when you see that there are other people fighting too. So I said that gives me hope.
And again, my hope is in my faith and in my family and in my community. I see people trying to make a difference. So
Yeah. I mean, I also think like one thing that I've heard over and over again is like, yes, you can do all the things like call your representatives and things like that. But the biggest impact that people can have is within their communities. Even if it's like you bring someone a pot of soup when they're healing from a surgery, or, you check in on that old lady at church who like maybe you haven't seen her for a week and you want to make sure she's okay. Uh,
exactly.
but I love that you both have that, but then you also have this book, which, the cool thing about literature is you don't know whose hands it will end up in and whose life it will affect. And then, of course, it's that ripple. So, like, some mom or many moms are going to read this to their kid at bedtime and then say to another mom, oh, you got to borrow this book or you got to buy this book, which is really cool and very exciting to think about.
That's what we hope. We do hope this will be the legacy that helps to change the world in its own way.
Just before we go, one question I ask folks is, what have we not talked about that you really want people to know about this book? Um, and about both of you as authors, creatives, artists.
One thing we could share is that all sales of Olivia Lauren books, there's 10% proceeds go to Charter Oak Cultural Center. So it helps an after school program because we're all about the extracurricular. So every purchase is helping make the community, Hartford community, a better place.
I would say for myself, just don't be afraid to try. I did modeling, I did swimming, I did acting. I'm continuing to try new stuff now that I'm in college. And the reason that I have this opportunity of speaking today is because, I was willing to try, I was willing to put my ideas and my efforts to make something and put it out in the world. So just be willing to try, like, don't have like that negative mindset that can kind of hold you back and be like, oh, but like, what if no one wants to read it? Like, oh, what if this and that? Because what if it goes well? What if a bunch of people want to read it? What if it helps like a bunch of kids? So just try to be positive about it and encourage yourself even when no one else is.
Wait, I want to know, what are some of the new things you're trying in college?
Right now, I'm currently in this program. It's called Husky Ambassadors. So what we do is we like meet with students, like prospective UConn students or students who think they're coming to UConn, and we kind of give them a campus tour, or we can take them like in a day in our classes, so they can see what the UConn life is like. And I really like doing that because I get to meet people, I get to tell them about my experiences, and give them the real because a lot of times like you're just gonna see the good stuff, if you go on the website, but you can actually like have that hands-on experience when you're on campus. So that's been really fulfilling. And I'm doing that with a friend or two. So
I love that. I hope that your outdoor tours have not been too icy and like unpleasant, just because I know it's been bitterly cold. So
yeah.
no, that's really exciting. Well, thank you both, and I will share the website. But folks should know if they want to find you, it's an easy website to remember. It's laurensimonepubs.com. Um, and they can go, they can find Olivia Lawrence, Olivia Dives In, um, or like any number of books. They have the whole world of books at their at their fingertips, which is really, really exciting. Um, so I just want to thank you both so much for joining me. And I'm so excited that this book is out in the world.
Thank you so much,
Thanks for
Lisa. It's
having us.
been a
Yeah, thank
pleasure.
you. And take care. Stay warm. It's supposed to be bitterly cold this weekend. So
You
You
as
as
well. Stay
well.
safe.
I know this is happy news.